Hello, everyone. It's Amy Lee, the Productive Mama, and today is the day I talk about kids and cell phones. So yesterday I talked about um, keeping the cost of cell phones down. Once you start adding kids, the cell phone bill can really go up. So I talked a lot about um, how I use Ting to pay about $23 per month per phone to keep our bill down, and some other strategies I use to make sure that cell phone bill stays low. And that $23 a month is them texting. I don't monitor their texting or their data usage, though I do try to train them in some strategies to generally keep data costs down, especially. So that's one way cell phones can cause stress, for sure. But beyond that, there's lots of other issues like how to keep perspective, not allow cell phones to really overtake family life. I've talked to parents who just hate how much their kid is on the cell phone all the time. So that's another area of stress, or safety issues once they have cell phones. The good part is that you feel like you know where they are. And you're communicating about pickups and drop-offs and making sure the kid is where he or she needs to be. On the other side of that, they now have access to essentially a world beyond your family, really. It really opens up communication with others. Okay, so that's some other issues. So I'm going to talk about some of those and comment in any reasonable way when you are watching this replay. And I will send you my free printable that I'm going to be using as kind of a guideline. Let's see. This is where you would put your name for for us, the Smith family phones, cell phone and device rules. I'm going to be using this, and I have this to give you. And you can post it near where you guys keep your phones, or you can just use it as a guideline to figure out your own phone rules. But I do have some, you can put your family name, and I have some blank spots. Also, you can make it a contract. I did not do this as a contract with my family, but there's a place to sign for a contract, and some other blank spots that you can fill in. So just comment with any questions, or if you agree or disagree, or what you do with your family, and I will be sending you that. I'll see your comment and get in touch with you about how to get you this free printable about family phone rules. Okay, so first thing is that there is not a right answer for everyone. You have to decide what is right for you. So I know teenagers who do not have their own cell phone, as hard as that is for you to believe, possibly. My teens do have smartphones. I know other families that just do flip phones because communication is the main point of having the cell phone, and they can communicate with mom and dad with a flip phone. And there are so many factors, a huge one being the maturity of your kid. That is huge. Just what is your kid like? How responsible are they? My kids, when they were homeschooling, I didn't feel there was a need for a phone, really, not that much, because they were with me most of the time. Even when they weren't, almost always did somebody in their group or a parent have a cell phone and could communicate with me. So, it was never a problem and still my youngest doesn't have a cell phone yet. She's 12, and there were times where she's at practice, and I get a text. Sometimes it's, hey, it's me, this is what's going on. Usually it's from the coach's phone. Most of the other girls on her team were a bit shocked that she did not have a cell phone. So it's not like the coach has, 15 girls trying to borrow a cell phone. No, it's just me, and it's usually, hey, practice is going to end 15 minutes early or something like that. So if your main concern is just being in touch with your child, or, someone's going to be late or early, usually, people in your kid's circle that you can say, hey, tell my kid to meet me here or there. Okay, but so when my oldest ones started high school, they got cell phones because they were no longer homeschooling, and I also felt that they had the maturity level to take care of a phone. Now, that being said, my oldest, we also really didn't have to pay for their cell phones because our extended family had somebody in a business that basically was constantly upgrading their phones. So we got some cast-offs, definitely not, the latest and greatest phones, but smartphones, nicer than I would have gotten them. And I think the first week she had her phone, my oldest, she basically flung it out of her locker, cracked the screen. We could hear the phone beeping. Basically, the screen stopped working. Okay, so thought she was mature enough. I think it ended up being a good lesson because I did not immediately go out and fix that phone. Basically, she had a birthday in a few months. I told her I told her she could use her money, which I knew she didn't have, to pay for the screen replacement, or she could wait until her birthday, and that would be her gift that year. It would be to replace that. I don't remember, this is a few years ago now, possibly also discussed sharing the expense. That may have been what I did. I think maybe I said, hey, I was going to spend this much on your birthday. I'll put it toward that replacement. And if you get other birthday money or you have other funds, you can put that toward that and we'll get you that screen. So it was a pain for her to not have her phone as far as drop-offs and pickups, because also she was new to school. So we were still navigating, how does all this work in our family? What time is the best time to do this? So it was kind of a pain for her not to have a phone. But did she appreciate it when she got that phone back? Yes. Did she take care of her phone? Yes. Did she be sure to use a protective screen and a protective case? Most definitely. Okay, so that's huge. It's just, can your kid take care of a phone? And you have to decide what happens when they don't. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. Okay, so as always, in anything, the first step is to set your own family priorities. Okay, so your kids' ages, their maturity level will determine if you get a smartphone or not, or your own family priorities will determine that. Whether or not you feel like you need monitoring apps or parental controls, limited numbers that they can call, or limited services. I know that there are kids' cell phones out there that let you program in only certain numbers, or have timers that limits their access. Your kid and your priorities will determine how much you need those. I did not have those. I did not have parental controls. I did recently add Life 360 because I have a driver. I don't really check it that much. I kind of forget about it, except when she's at a dance till midnight. I just want to make sure, she's on her way home. So I don't know that I would have put that on that early, except for the driving part. And for some of you, that's really not going to be an issue for a little while. That's a whole other layer of worry in the parenting world. Okay. Let's see. So I think how you approach parenting in general with your kid is going to be reflected in how you approach tech and phones. But you've got to set your own priorities. You probably need to be on the same page with whoever else is parenting and taking care of your kid. And then you've got to be pretty firm with that. Before your kid even gets a phone is the best time to figure out these priorities, how important they are, and show your kid that you're serious about sticking to them. Because if, a week after my kid got her phone, I went out and replaced her phone, that would have set the tone right there of, I can treat this phone however I want because I'm going to get a new one. And when you have multiple kids, even if you don't, that's impossible for some people. So just keep that in mind. Set that tone, set those expectations before you get the phone. Okay, a few other things. We do have a home line and a landline. I'll put that link in later. This also delayed our cell phone usage for our kids because we had the option to communicate with our kids if they were home alone. So if I, early on that was I go out to exercise, I run a quick errand, I could still communicate with them. So maybe if you are wanting to delay getting a cell phone, but that's one of your concerns is having a kid home alone, then maybe, a $6 a month or a prepaid flip phone that just stays at home might be an option for you. So having a landline does sort of impact some of these decisions. Okay, so I had asked people some of their concerns about cell phones 2 days ago, yesterday. And one was sort of the peer pressure. You know, how uncool is it not to have a cell phone? Well, I don't know. I'm kind of an advocate for having your kids suffer a little bit, making them wait, not having it when other people do really makes them appreciate it when they get it. So I always joke, if you know me, that I make my kids ask for 2 years to join a sport or to do an activity, mostly because it's a huge commitment. And also when they finally get it, they really appreciate it. So kind of the same thing with phones, or get them that flip phone that's super uncool. Because then when they do get a cooler phone, they're really going to appreciate it. And again, define what is the role of the cell phone in your life. And I'll talk about how I did that in a minute when I show you the cell phone rules that we have. Okay. Okay, so yeah, let's go ahead and do that. So this is the printable that if you comment here, I will happily send this to you. You would put like Smith, you know, Lee, family phone, cell phone, and device rules, okay? So at our house, this would go at our cell phone table. You could have a cell phone shelf, a cell phone area. This is where everybody's cell phone goes. Mom and dad's cell phones go here at night. So they all go to sleep. We put them in airplane mode or turn them off. One of our phones once, basically you had to take the battery out every night to turn it off or to charge it. That was the only way it would charge. Everyone's phones go there. So that's an easy way for mom and dad to see that everyone has turned their cell phone in, sort of. So the first thing I have here is hours of usage. So cell phones, tablets, and computers are put away or placed on the phone table before blank 8 a.m. and after blank p.m. You get to fill that in. So, you know, you could say, hey, cell phones, we are done with cell phones at 9 p.m. or do not go get your cell phone before 7 a.m., whatever it is for your family. So that can be one of your rules. Then I have, please request permission for exceptions due to homework. Unfortunately, computers are used so much in so many schools. Or they're texting their friends, you know, oh, she needs me to send her this picture, or hey, did you get this problem? So there is some communication going on about schoolwork. Again, this is about, you know, the trust you have in your child, the responsibilities they've taken, and the privileges they've earned. Okay. Okay, so here is a list of our general approach to phones. Phones are owned by the adults for use of the children to communicate with family. Okay, so that's the first thing. If my kid comes to me and says, I have $300, I want to buy a new phone, in our family, no, not necessarily. That's not going to work. We, as the parents, own the cell phones. We let our kids use them, and their primary purpose is to communicate with the parents. So now, in reality, I know they're communicating with their peers more than they're communicating with me. But again, this is the tone, the expectation, the culture that we're building in our house. And for a while, you know, I was like, my kid wasn't answering when I would call sometimes. I'd say, that's not how it works. That phone is to communicate with me, especially when I'm supposed to pick you up or we're supposed to meet somewhere. So that's how we do that. Now, my daughter's last phone was dying. I knew it was dying. She was complaining about it, and I kind of saw over time, yes, this phone is dying. She, of course, wanted a super fancy phone. I did not want to buy a super fancy phone. So we sort of did here's how much I'm willing to put toward a phone. You can, I'll subsidize it. You can make up the difference. And we had a lot of haggling of, well, that, you know, you want that fancy phone, I'm not going to pay for it. You could get this phone, which is fancier, if you're willing to put this much, you know, a lot of haggling, but still the basic premise, the phones are to communicate with us. We own them. Okay. So with that in mind, and kind of having that be sort of the first layer of our phone culture at our house, the phones can stay home when the family is out together. So if we're at church, if we're at dinner together, Sometimes there's flexibility here. So if you're meeting somebody afterwards, or sometimes I say, I don't want to be taking a bunch of pictures. You can go ahead and bring your phone. But my kids don't take their phones everywhere because a lot of times it's not necessary. They're with us, so they don't need to have their phones with them. And this is something they really started doing. I didn't really even think about this, but I like it. Phones are always in protective cases with screen covers. Now we have had some arguments about, here is a case I got for you, honey, because this is really going to protect your phone. And oh, that is not cool looking. Okay, then let's work together on finding a protective phone case, because if a repair is necessary, repairs and replacements are at the expense of the child or whomever damaged the phone. So granted, if I broke their phone, I would feel responsible for that. But if they break their phone, they know, as I've already explained, I'm not running out and getting one, okay? So whoever damaged the phone repairs it. Phones will not distract from parental instructions or family conversation. If I'm talking to you, especially if I'm giving you instructions, or we're going over what's going on today, or hey, I'm going to pick you up at this time, don't be looking at your phone. Your phone should not be distracting you from what I'm saying. Now, at the same time, are we guilty of this as parents? Yes, probably. There are times when I'm being distracted by my phone while my kid's trying to converse. So again, this is building a culture. So just like, oh, did I put this on here? I don't know if I put this on here. So another rule that we have in our house is that passwords are basically public knowledge. My kids know my password. I know their passwords. So again, modeling, right? If I'm always distracted by my phone, why would I expect my kids not to be? If I keep my phone in my room at night, what does that tell my kids? Okay. Phones will be handed over immediately upon request. I have not really had to do this, but I know so many parents who they have to take their kid's phone. That's the only thing that really makes an impact or when something is going on in the family. Few times have I handed it over. Have I said, hand that to me? And a lot of times it's because it's distracting them from what I'm trying to accomplish with them. And phones do not belong at the table during meals. So those are general, here's what phones are and here's what phones are not. Here's the proper role of phones. Here are some of the rules, okay? And young house guests. So sometimes when we have house guests over, we ask them to abide by these too. Everyone puts the phones up at night. No phones in rooms after bedtime. No phones in rooms without permission. Oh, I do have this. Passwords are common knowledge to family, but not shared outside the family. Social media accounts are established with adult supervision and access. So if you have concerns about social media, then you're probably considering following your kid on social media or not even letting them have a social media account. And this is something we've dealt with somewhat, but you can also talk about how they're using it, why they want it. Maybe you need a contract for that. Just a lot of conversation and set it up with them. And that you can also have the same password rule for that. Okay, cellular and data are turned off for video and non-necessary apps. Okay, so their phones, in order to save money, do not need to be sending video or watching videos over cell. We do that over wireless. Same thing, not all apps need to be on all the time. And discuss which apps are necessary with blank. So mom, dad, whoever is making those decisions. I do a lot of swapping. Oh, you want that new app? Is there an app we can get rid of that you don't need anymore? We do that a lot. Again, I don't have the latest and greatest technology with tons and tons of memory. So a lot of times it's, you want this? What can we get rid of so we can make space for it? And then there are some times that we just don't have space for something. Okay, sometimes you may be asked to install apps the adults consider required. So Life 360, or I have had my kids install apps that save or compress data usage. So mom and dad have a say in which apps you can and can't use, including ones we require. Use home or other free wireless when possible, just a good habit to get into to save on that cell phone bill. And back up your phone and photos regularly. So a lot of kids don't realize something happens to your phone, all your information is gone, all your pictures are gone. Now, if you already are doing an automatic cloud thing, you probably don't have to worry about that. If you're not, then make sure they get those pictures and those contacts saved somewhere. So those are the rules on this printable that I have for you if you make a comment when you watch the replay. I am happy to address other questions later. These are just some of the ones that I have seen that people asked beforehand. And the final word I would say is even kids, but even kids know how much cell phones impact their personal interactions. They might not really know in a way like we do, they can't compare to, to sound like an old person. When I was young, we didn't have cell phones and we had to talk face to face and we had to, make arrangements ahead of time and just show up when we said, or, we had to actually write letters, or my friend and I made audio tapes and sent them in the mail. There was no FaceTiming friends when you moved to a new base or things like that. But they know that it does. They can look around and they can see everybody's heads down, tech neck. And the example I have of this is I'm about to take a bunch of teenagers on a youth group trip. And in our youth group, we do not allow cell phones to come along with us. Kids complain about this. The kids who have been doing this with me for a little while might complain because they know they're supposed to when other people are looking, but they know that it makes for such a much better experience between them and their friends when they do not have their cell phones with them. Even on the rides to and from the destination, if they all had their cell phone, even if it wasn't a cell phone, even if it's a non-connected iPod or something, what happens? Everybody's earphones go in. They're all looking down. They're all in their own worlds. When we take away those cell phones, they are forced to interact, and they want to, and they connect and they communicate. So they know this, and that's something you need to watch out for when you are determining how cell phones may be affecting your family. Be sure you're paying attention to your kids, of course, but also be sure you're paying attention to yourself. So 2020 just did a special recently where they showed young kids just begging for their parents' attention, putting themselves physically between the cell phone and their parent. So just make sure that you are also being healthy with your cell phone if you decide to get your kid one. But don't feel pressured if you don't feel like it's good for your kid or they're just not ready. Don't feel pressured. Do what's right for you. And if this would help you set your own guidelines, please just comment and I will get it to you. And I'm happy to answer other questions as well in the comments. Thank you for the questions that were asked ahead of time. Thank you to everybody who shared how much they pay for their cell phones. You can go back to the last video I did to see that. And have a great afternoon.